Amazing act of kindness. Black waitress's touching offer to two orphans reveals a surprising twist. Michelle wiped her brow, the warmth of the greasy diner kitchen mixing with the cold, drizzling rain outside. She glanced at the clock, straining against the urge to bolt back to her nursing books. 2 jobs, juggling back and forth like a delicate dance, every minute counting towards her dream of healing others. Yet reality crushed her. Each shift drained her further, her body begging for rest while her heart longed for family. Laughter, love, a place to belong, something she had missed while growing up. The bell above the door jingled, pulling her focus. 2 boys stumbled in, their hunched shoulders revealing tentative spirits. Jamie and Alex. She could feel the emptiness radiating from them, shadows of lost childhood. A deep-seated fear gripped her, a strong impulse to help them too, but could she afford to? Her boss's voice thundered in the back of her mind. He valued profits over people. What if the boys were turned away? She approached them with tentative steps, placing 2 steaming plates of fries and burgers before them. "Hey there, how about some lunch?" Just then, the diner owner, a stout man with a permanent scowl, marched over. "What's going on here?" he snapped, eyes darting toward the boys, judging. "Those kids are scaring off customers." Michelle's throat tightened. She knew how precarious their situation was, always fluctuating between kindness and cruelty in a town that rarely cast a look of compassion. Her gut twisted, the fear of conflict battling against an urge to protect the boys. "Sir, they just needed a meal. They deserve some kindness," she said, the words fighting against the heaviness in her chest. But his glare hardened. Numbers and bottom lines loomed larger than lives. Was this a mistake? "Get those boys out of here before I lose more business," he warned, his tone devoid of empathy. Michelle's mind raced. Exhaustion pulsed through her veins, and the weight of responsibilities sank deeper. Should she turn away? Would standing up for them mean risking her job when she was already treading water? But overcoming struggles had been her lifeline, and now it was her turn to show courage. Just then, Jamie's voice trembled. I inherited money from my aunt. It's a lot," he gasped, eyes wide with determination. Michelle froze. She stared at the boys, their innocence now intertwined with something heavier. Could this be true? A fortune? And would it change their lives or simply lead them further into judgmental eyes? Before she could respond, her heartbeat magnified. Each thought collided like a crash of thunder. Eager for their future, scared of the consequences, questioning her ability to navigate this storm. Beyond the diner's windows, she glimpsed the rain-soaked street, and for a moment, all became terribly clear. The very people who needed help the most were often cast aside, considered burdens. She was balancing on the edge of 2 worlds, her past shadows and the present. Potential light of new beginnings. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. Michelle felt her heart race as she faced the challenge ahead. Would she risk everything for 2 lost boys? Or would she succumb to the demands of a world that treated the vulnerable with suspicion? Doubts crept in. Would she be enough? Just as hope flickered, swirling into the depths of uncertainty, she could almost hear the wind urging her onward. But the stakes felt higher than ever. She had to decide before the storm broke. And with that, she stood there, teetering on an invisible precipice, ready to step into war, where truths about family and belonging would unfold like never before. In that charged moment, Michelle's mind wrestled with an avalanche of thoughts. She could almost hear the pulse of her own heartbeat, matching the tempo of anxiety skittering through her. Would her choice to stand firm against her boss's storm toughen her resolve or compact her vulnerabilities? Michelle? Jamie's voice broke through her spiraling thoughts, filled with a mix of apprehension and hope. "Yes," she replied, feeling a fresh conviction wash over her. Those boys needed more than just a meal. They needed an advocate, a voice that stood unwavering against adversity. I want to help my brother," Jamie stammered. His eyes shone with sincerity, devoid of the fear that had initially commandeered them. I know I can help us. I think it's time we made our own way." His words ignited something within her, a flicker of inspiration that demanded action. This wasn't just about food. This was about empowerment and forging a new path in life. She understood that profound transformation began with choices, and perhaps this could extend beyond her circumstances. "Listen," she said, her resolve crystallizing, "you can be more than this. With what you've inherited, you can change your story. It doesn't have to define you." While she spoke, the diner owner loomed, a dark cloud on the horizon. She wanted to confront him, to challenge his stringent focus on profits at the expense of humanity. But what difference would it make if she didn't first equip Jamie and Alex with a louder voice of their own? "Come on, let me show you something," she urged, her feet already carrying her toward the diner's back entrance. The boys' eyes widened. Could it be? They'd barely trusted the warmth of the food she offered. Now they were being offered a glimpse of possibility. She led them into a cramped storage room lined with boxes. It barely resembled an oasis, yet it was here that she had spent countless hours studying, the scent of stale fries clinging to her work clothes. A small window let in murky light, yet within this dim space lay a lifeline, her nursing books, a distant dream, but one she had fought for. "Here's what you need to know," she said, grabbing a crumpled notebook from one of the boxes. "Determination is your biggest asset. With your inheritance, you can start working towards something greater. Education, stability, it's all within reach if you ignite your courage." The boys exchanged glances, their anxious faces revealing a burgeoning understanding. But would they be willing to embrace their potentials? Michelle's mind churned with ideas for them, yet an unease hung like a shroud. Would they embrace the challenge of moving forward? This moment crystallized within her what she had yearned for throughout her own struggles: belonging, identity, purpose. Michelle felt unshackled by the weight of her responsibilities as she faced two lives standing on the brink of change. In doing so, she recognized a vital part of herself: the fierce protector, the healer in training, who could transform fear into motivation, not just for herself, but for those deserving of a chance. "Jamie, Alex, let's take a leap of faith together. I'll help you navigate what comes next." Her voice turned steely. She was no longer teetering on the precipice, but instead prepared to carve a new pathway. Yet deep inside, a simmering conflict remained. Could she fully commit to their potential while balancing her own dreams? A flicker of doubt flared up once more. What if her own ambitions fell by the wayside in the process? As excitement bled through the tension, she also felt the gnawing worry that her struggles might not end with her dreams of nursing, but could somehow intertwine with these boys' futures. She couldn't help but wonder if running towards something greater would also mean learning to let parts of herself go. And just then, the bell over the diner door jingled again, heralding a new arrival amid the storm brewing within her. Who else would step into the lives she had just begun to reshape? The echoes of potential vibrated in the air. Her heart quickened at the thought. A new face could unveil unforeseen challenges. What would it bring? And would she be able to extend her heart like she did with the boys? The door swung open, casting an elongated shadow across the dim room and slicing through the tense air. A woman entered, her presence commanding yet approachable, eyes scanning the cramped space before landing on Michelle and the boys. It was Clara, a fellow waitress from the diner, known for her compassionate spirit and unyielding belief in second chances. Michelle often admired Clara's ability to connect with difficult customers, recognizing the humanity behind weary faces. "What's going on here?" Clara asked, raising a brow with genuine curiosity. Michelle felt an involuntary mix of comfort and protectiveness swell within her. She had been fortifying these boys' budding dreams, and she wasn't sure whether she wanted to invite another person into that tender space. "Just showing them a different path," she responded slowly, precisely. As she spoke, the urgency in her tone revealed more than just the desire for change. It was laced with the whispers of her own tempestuous journey. "I could see it in your eyes when you walked in," Clara said softly. "You're not just teaching them about promises. You're breathing life into their hopes. But I know that look. I've been there too." The weight of Clara's words pushed against Michelle's walls of uncertainty. She realized this moment wasn't solely about Jamie and Alex. It was a reflection of her own aspirations and regrets. While Michelle had been bent on helping the boys, their situation illuminated her own vulnerabilities. "I'm scared, Clara," she admitted, her voice threatening to crack. "What if I can't balance my own dreams while helping them? What if I fail?" Clara stepped forward, her warmth enveloping the room like a cozy blanket. "You won't know unless you try, Michelle. Sometimes helping others forces us to face our fears head-on. You might find that by nurturing their potential, you'll fuel your own." Michelle studied Clara's composed exterior, her thoughts swirling in a tempest of self-doubt and yearning. As she fought to articulate her fears, another part of her stoked the flames of ambition. She reconsidered her nursing dreams. Perhaps they were interconnected with what she might achieve through Jamie and Alex. Could she find a way to thrive alongside them? "Okay, I want to help them," Michelle said, determination knitting her brow. "But I need to strategize. If we're doing this, it needs to go beyond talk. It requires action, tangible steps we can follow." She took a deep breath, imagining what a plan could look like, transforming dream into reality, her mind swimming in a sea of possibilities. Clara smiled, her approval empowering Michelle. "Let's map it out together. We can brainstorm ideas, set intentions, anything to get them moving." The now-found collaboration anchored her in an unexpected way. It wasn't just Jamie and Alex's future hanging in the balance. It was Michelle's growth as a leader, a healer, and a mentor. For the first time, she could envision a shared purpose, a collective aspiration to rise against their respective adversities. And just like that, Michelle felt the passion surfacing anew. She began listing potential actions in her mind. Vocational training, scholarships, part-time work opportunities. Every idea seemed to build a bridge, inching them closer to a place of stability. Yet, as they spoke of their ambitions, a nagging thought lingered in her mind. Was Clara's support enough to hold the weight of their hopes? Would she prove to be an ally or another distraction? And as those thoughts percolated, the diner door swung open again, and with it, the unknown rushed in, shattering the warmth of their newfound connection. Who else would emerge to challenge Michelle's burgeoning resolve? As the door swung shut behind the newcomer, Michelle felt an instantaneous shift in the atmosphere. The sound of laughter echoed through the space, juxtaposing the tension that had characterized the previous moment. A middle-aged man, jovial and perhaps a little too loud for the intimate diner setting, strolled in with an air of familiarity, earning quick smiles from the staff. His arrival was like a gust of wind that threatened to scatter the delicate threads she had just begun to weave between her, Jamie, and Alex. "Got a fresh round of coffee for the table," he called out cheerily to Clara, who had just turned to face him, her expression morphing from warmth to a slight mask of apprehension. "We'll get to it in a moment, Tony," she responded, firmly but kindly, her attention shifting back to Michelle and the boys. As the banter between Clara and Tony ensued, Michelle's thoughts darted back to her own ambitions and resolutions. The excitement she'd felt moments earlier began to erode, replaced by a familiarity with doubt. She quickly glanced at Jamie and Alex, who were now observers in the unfolding scene. Would they sense her faltering confidence? The weight of her aspirations mocked her exhilarating energy, as if pointing out the sheer improbability of her endeavor. "Let's not lose momentum," she said, almost to herself as much as to Clara. "I want to lay down a plan, maybe something foundational. We could conduct an informal workshop or a mentorship program, just to get them thinking bigger." Clara nodded, absorbed in their conversation, yet Michelle felt Tony's presence looming nearby, distracting her inwardly as he engaged with the other staff. "You can do this," Clara reaffirmed gently, her focus undeterred. "But you need to tackle only what you can handle without burning out. Balance is key." The ringing of a bell from the kitchen interrupted them, signaling another round of orders. It was a reminder of the relentless demands of the diner that loomed over their aspirations. Yet, rather than deter her, it sharpened Michelle's resolve. As she leaned into Clara's affirmation, she remembered the late nights studying after shifts at the diner, barely keeping her eyes open. How had she forgotten those moments of grit and determination? "Perhaps I can integrate what I know from nursing into this," she pondered aloud, excitement flickering back to life. An awareness of mental health and coping strategies would be so beneficial, not just for the boys, but for me. "Sounds like a solid angle," Clara encouraged. "You can make it practical, teach them stress relief techniques, ways to cope with life's pressures." Michelle found herself pacing slightly, visions exploding in her mind. "And we could include guest speakers, local professionals who have overcome hardships. It's essential for them to see how real people navigate real struggles." The minute details began falling in line, yet the specter of Tony's laughter, jovial yet jarring, echoed through her thoughts. It was as if he represented her past, a version of herself that indulged in escapism and distraction rather than focused on grit and drive. Determined to reclaim her narrative, she shoved aside the doubt creeping in. Clara, observing, instinctively shifted closer, sensing the change within Michelle. "You're not just planning for them, Michelle. You're sculpting your future, too. Don't forget that." But with every step Michelle took firming her resolve, fear lingered. She was on the cusp of redefining not only her life's path, but transforming the boys' futures. As she fought to keep her focus, another shriek of laughter erupted from Tony, now drawing the attention of other customers, their eyes filled with interest, making the world outside seem more enticing than the work ahead. She felt a rhythmic pull between ambition and distraction, and with it, the pressure of proving her worth loomed large. "Get ready," she muttered to herself under her breath, as the need for priorities crystallized. But as a familiar face stepped into the diner just then, a deliberate reminder of her past, the tension tightened again. It was a face she recognized all too well, a face that might unveil everything she sought to escape. Would this be the challenge she had been waiting for, or the catastrophe poised to upend her plans? Michelle's pulse quickened as she squinted through the diner's bustling ambiance to recognize the newcomer. It was Brian, a fleeting memory from her past. His arrival conjured up fragments of her former self, trapped in aimlessness, distracted by the same escapism that had drawn her away from her true aspirations. With each tentative step he took towards the counter, her thoughts twisted like the steam rising from a freshly brewed pot of coffee. The pressure of her intentions weighed heavily, reminding her of the disarray she once lived in. What would Brian think of her now? Would he laugh at her ambitions, just as others had in whispers? "Don't crumble," she murmured, steadying herself against the counter, inhaling the buttery scent of baked goods that wafted from the kitchen. She had fought too hard, endured too much to let the past dictate her present. As Clara had reminded her, she was sculpting her future. But the anxiety prickled. Brian was now approaching her table, waving simply. It was like an unwelcome echo from a life once filled with mistakes. "Long time no see, eh?" Brian's smile was casual, almost disarming. "Heard you've been making moves, Michelle." "Yeah, trying to keep up," she replied, forcing a smile as she braced herself for the conversation. Each word with him felt like a slight misstep. He had always been easy to talk to, yet impossible to keep at arm's length. "What's this I hear about you mentoring kids now?" His eyes glimmered with genuine curiosity, but there was a challenge hidden beneath. "I mean, that's a pretty big deal. Didn't expect that from you." Michelle sensed the skepticism behind his bright facade. The tinges of doubt that rose within her felt palpable as she took a shaky breath, searching for words that would validate not only her decision, but also her growth. "I'm doing what I can to make a difference, or at least try," she said, determining to speak with conviction, guiding them through tough stuff, things I've faced. "Impressive. Not everyone has the guts," he commented, leaning closer, his demeanor softer yet probing. "But are you sure you're the right person for the job? What do you have to offer them?" "More than you might think," Michelle declared, the tension sharpening her resolve. She realized in that moment she had everything to offer, blending her nursing experience, life lessons, and the scars that had turned her ambition into a catalyst for growth. Brian raised an eyebrow, processing her assertiveness. "Maybe so. Wouldn't hurt to share a bit of that with some of those kids you're trying to help." The gleam in his eyes shifted, something closer to respect. Fueled by an unexpected surge of confidence, Michelle leaned in, her pulse steadying again. "I want to create an environment where they can learn to confront their struggles and exceed limitations, real life lessons from experiences. I'm not just talking coping strategies, it's about emotion, resilience. I need to show them what's possible." The diner seemed to dive into silence as she poured out her aspirations. With each word, she felt the weight of her doubts melt away, revealing a clearer vision for herself and those boys, the motivation coursing through her veins like a warm current. Brian's expression morphed to one of admiration. "Now that's the Michelle I remember. Maybe there's more to you than just what we see." Their conversation shifted, but Michelle felt invigorated, each minute counting down as moments immersed in determining her future, no longer interspersed with the noise of doubt or distraction. She needed to channel this momentum, ignite it. "Can we count on your help, Brian, to engage with the boys?" she asked, her breath hitching slightly with a mix of hope and trepidation. "A real-world perspective, you know." Brian paused thoughtfully. "It could work, but it'll take commitment, Michelle. Are you ready for that?" The question hung between them. Her eyes flitted away for a moment, traversing the faces of Jamie and Alex, their youthful potential glimmering brightly amid their uncertainties. "I am," she stated firmly, dispelling any shadows of indecision. As Brian smiled, the possibilities surged forth, but deep within her, instincts warned her of the fragility of this newfound alignment. The opening of potential was exhilarating, yet undeniably saddled with risk. As the initial buzz of her determination settled, a voice interrupted them, harsh and loud, claiming attention. It was Tony again, but this time his attention was directed toward her and Brian. "Hey, what's going on over here? You two look awfully cozy." The playful jab sent chills through Michelle. The familiar tension resurfaced anew, urging her to respond. With Brian's face beside hers, the connection felt almost palpable, the stakes of this encounter higher than ever as challenges loomed ahead. Michelle took a breath, aligning her vision not just for herself, but for the boys depending on her. "Let's get ready." The resolve in her voice cut through the lingering taunts. Yet, in that moment, she felt the weight of inevitability close around her. How would she contend with this uncanny blend of support and scrutiny? The challenge of facing her own past and defining her new future was only just beginning. But as she glanced back at Brian, determination flickering in the air, she knew that perhaps the true test was still waiting just beyond the horizon. What other revelations lay in the stories yet to unfold? Michelle's determination felt electrified, yet the barbs of Tony's comment pricked at her resolve. She turned to Brian, searching his face for a hint of camaraderie amid the swirling uncertainty. Did he sense it too, the potential for her past to creep in and disrupt the momentum she had worked so hard to regain? "Let's go outside for a moment," she proposed, the words spilling out before she could second-guess herself. The air felt stifling, her thoughts weaving through a tangle of apprehension and opportunity. Brian seemed taken aback for a split second, but nodded, following her out of the diner's clamor into the coolness of the late afternoon air. Once outside, the din of the diner faded into the background, leaving only the sound of tires on pavement and distant laughter. "What's the first step?" she asked, feeling out a sudden burst of clarity that cut through the fog of her anxiety. Brian leaned against the building, crossing his arms, his eyebrow raised in a familiar way that made her pulse quicken. "You need to focus on what and how you want to share. It's one thing to feel inspired. It's another to translate that into something actionable for those boys." His words resonated with her, igniting a flicker of an idea. "I want them to see that the struggles I faced don't have to dictate their futures. I want them to understand resilience, to grasp that their stories can change." Brian watched her with a newfound respect, but there was a hint of challenge in his gaze. "Okay then, how will they connect with that? You need to be relatable, Michelle. They're not looking for a halo or a martyr. They want to know they're not alone in their battles." The thought settled on her with weight. She was not just a mentor, but a bridge, someone who could pave a path for their doubts to transform into determination, just as she had done. "I've been through enough to show them that it's possible to rise above. But it won't be easy," she replied, her voice steady. "Exactly. Use your journey. You need stories, anecdotes, something that resonates. Remember when we were kids and those movies about overcoming challenges inspired us?" He straightened, the fire of youthful nostalgia evident in his eyes. "Those moments shaped us." "Can you replicate that for them?" Images of her own childhood flickered in her mind, mistakes, a broken home, nights full of hope and despair. But reflection sparked a sense of purpose, transforming those painful chapters into the material that could ignite the boys' imaginations. "I can incorporate my experiences, maybe even share my failures. That way, they realize it's okay to stumble, that it doesn't mark the end." "Good. Find a way to make them feel seen," he encouraged, the tone of his voice shifting, evolving into something more than a friendly banter. It was penetrating insight, a gilded route through the maze of her possibilities. As they stood together outside the diner, the sinking sun mirrored the shift within her. Michelle envisioned her first session, a gathering of hesitation, laughter, and stories merging seamlessly into a powerful dialogue. But just as excitement began to swell within her, a thought nagged at the back of her mind. What if the boys rejected her? What if her past rendered her unworthy of their trust? "Brian," she spoke up, swallowing the latest rush of self-doubt that clawed at her throat. "What if they see me and think I'm just a facade, that I'm trying to be someone I'm not?" He turned, expression serious yet warm. "Then you do what everyone does. You lay it all out there. You show them that what you've gone through forged you into who you are. Remember, authenticity cuts through all the noise. You hold the key to your story." Michelle took a deep breath, trying to embrace that thought, tugging a soft thread of hope in her heart. But she felt a rising tide of urgency to craft her narrative into something more compelling, something transformative. As they stepped back inside the diner, she couldn't shake the tightness in her chest. Brian's insights lingered, likely to become the foundational stone of her journey ahead. But even amid the potential stirring in her gut, the lingering shadows of insecurity threatened her resolve. Tony was still at the counter, watching with a smirk that seemed to unravel her spirit. She sneered, refusing for the moment to let him intrude again. Determined, she headed toward the booth at the diner's far end, her mind casting forward into the future. Was she ready for this commitment? The answer pulsed through her veins. "I am," she muttered under her breath. But as she glanced back to where Brian had settled in beside her, she couldn't shake the feeling that the challenge was looming. What if facing her past was easier than facing those who had yet to understand her transformation? The question surged within her, tantalizing and terrifying. Her next move beckoned, but she knew one thing. She was going to uncover the depths of her potential, both in herself and for the boys who needed so much more than a mentor. Sudden determination found footing, propelling her with each resolve-filled heartbeat. And just as quickly as her confidence surged, she realized that the horizon was riddled with shadows that would ask her to confront not just her past, but also the doubts of everyone who might question her worth. What awaited her when the true narrative of her mentorship begins to unfold? The first session loomed closer, a pulsating heart of anticipation and dread within her. Every thought about it churned like a storm inside Michelle's head. She sat at her desk, staring at the blank screen in front of her, feeling the weight of expectation and the sharp blade of self-doubt. Would her experiences be enough to reach the boys? She pictured their faces, not just the excitement or the apathy, but the deep-seated fears lurking behind their eyes, fears she knew all too well. "What do I really have to offer?" she muttered aloud, a nagging question that echoed back in the quiet of her room. Determined to push past the fog of uncertainty, she opened a blank document, her fingers poised over the keyboard, ready to hash out her thoughts. The ideal plan had crystallized in her mind, but execution remained elusive. Authenticity, she repeated under her breath, recalling Brian's advice. She needed to weave the fabric of her narrative into something tangible and relatable. The clutter around her began to fade as she pictured the boys, their struggles, their laughter, moments when they felt lost. They needed to know they weren't alone, nor were their stories predetermined. Michelle's fingers began to dance over the keys as memories surged. The sting of poverty, the echoes of harsh words, the warmth of unexpected kindness. She recalled a moment when a teacher, who saw past her failings, recognized potential in her circumstances and offered her a lifeline. That could be her message, a testament to human resilience, the power of simple gestures, and the belief in change. As she poured her heart into a draft, she felt the room around her brightening, a rising sense of clarity. Each story brought her closer to a core realization. It was not simply about her transformation, but rather how those struggles could create tangible paths for others, already shaping their futures before they even grasped their own potential. Yet, as quickly as empowerment flared, the shadows crept back in, whispering doubts. What if her past experiences weren't relatable to them? What if her vulnerabilities laid bare felt more like weaknesses than strength? How many of her failures should she share without eroding her authority? Her breath caught, holding back the swell of insecurity. It felt paralyzing, as if her past were a viscous bond dragging her back. The stakes felt impossibly high in this endeavor. They were about to see not just her triumphs, but the myriad struggles that had shaped her into who she was today. Taking a deep breath, she deleted the last few lines and wrote, "I am imperfect, and that gives me strength," allowing the words to carry her insecurities. It was an acknowledgement, a permission to be fallible and honest. That, one that led them from doubt to acceptance. In the following days, she honed her stories into something more structured, shyly sharing parts with Brian for feedback. Each session chipped away at her apprehensions and replaced them with a sense of familiar camaraderie. Together, they shaped her narrative like sculptors molding clay, creating a blend of anecdotes, lessons, and moments of profound clarity. But in the final moments before their first gathering, a sudden wave of urgency gripped her heart. What if she spoke too freely? What if she laid herself bare and the boys took it as fodder for ridicule? Walking to her car that day, she felt the prickle of tension race across her skin when she spotted Tony making his way toward her. "What's the matter? Spilling your life story to a bunch of kids who probably don't care?" He snickered, the words carrying an unmistakable weight that lingered in the air. She clenched her fists, fighting the urge to retreat. "Just watch," she quipped, her voice steadier than the quaking in her chest. As she stepped into her vehicle, a potent mix of defiance and fear ignited within her. She would face this, standing firm in the face of doubt, not only Tony's, but also her own. The time had come to confront the deepest corners of her past, to turn what was once a barrier into a gateway for those boys, who deserved more than what life had thrown at them. What would happen when she crossed that threshold into vulnerability, exposing not just her journey, but the very essence of who she was? Could this moment finally redefine her, both in her eyes and in the eyes of those she aimed to support? The night before the first session was a restless one, filled with disjointed thoughts and rapid heartbeats that echoed against the stillness of her room. Each time she shut her eyes, the familiar shame and embarrassment washed over her, stirring old memories she had long since tried to bury. Michelle turned restlessly, the anxiety creeping into her dreams, tainting even the semblance of sleep. Waking up, she felt hollow yet heavy, as if the air around her was dense with judgment. The morning light was almost blinding, illuminating all the uncertainties that lay ahead. Today, she would stand not just in front of those boys, but also before her own ghosts. After several failed attempts to prepare herself, she ended up frantically scribbling notes, summarizing the core of her message. Your pain is valid. Your journey matters. Yet her thoughts felt disjointed, as if the words flickered in and out of focus. With each line she penned, her inner critic rose to life, dissecting her every thought. "Can I really say this?" she whispered to herself, flipping the pages frantically as she tried to recapture the passion she felt while drafting. Desperation crept in, and a looming dread settled like a thick fog over her mind. In the early afternoon, she arrived at the community center, casting a cautious glance at the building's imposing facade. It appeared as imposing as the doubts swirling within her. The sight of the boys gathering at tables shifted her anxiety into overdrive. They were more than just a group. Each one of them carried the weight of their own stories. Each face a canvas painted with experiences she could only begin to fathom. Taking a deep breath, she stepped inside. The room felt charged, a mixture of eagerness and skepticism hanging in the air. She found herself crawling toward their skepticism, feeling as though she was stepping onto a foreign battlefield. Just be real, she reminded herself, but it felt like an incantation without faith to back it. As she settled in front of them, the trepidation mingled with a dormant fire. Something surged within her. She began by sharing a snippet of her childhood, a moment where she felt utterly lost yet caught in a web of hopeful possibility. It was a vulnerable start, raw yet essential. Eyes began to flicker with interest. A few even started to lean forward, as if they were attempting to untangle the threads of her story. With each word she offered, the tension lessened, and a strange connection began weaving itself between them. What surprised her most was their openness to share. It started with one boy, hesitant at first, revealing a quiet struggle that resonated among his peers. Suddenly, their walls started to crumble, and she felt something start to shift in the room. Yet, just as she felt the crackle of connection, Tony's mocking tone from days before replayed in her head. "This is foolish," it echoed, a shadow lurking at the edges of her newfound belief. Shaking off his words, she leaned into the moment, the warmth of their shared vulnerabilities gradually overpowering the chill of her doubts. Here, in this small sanctuary of openness, she recognized that their stories combined could shatter the heavy silence that surrounded their pain. However, the clock ticked remorselessly, and as the session drew to a close, the boys' expectant gazes reminded her of the stakes. She could not let them down. She had opened a door. Now they were peering through it, waiting for her to show them a glimpse of what lay on the other side. "Together, we can uncover strength where we once saw weakness," she concluded, feeling a new resolve forming within her. As they departed, she knew this moment was merely the tip of an emerging iceberg, ready for exploration beyond the confines of shared stories. Walking back to her car, she marveled at how light the heaviness within her felt. But a voice still nagged at her. What if they don't return? What if your words weren't enough? Just then, she spotted one boy lingering behind, the most reserved of them all. He approached her, uncertainty painted across his face. "Can we talk again? I have more to share." And in that moment, the question of what she could offer expanded far beyond anything she had anticipated. What lay ahead for both of them, she realized, was unpredictable but necessary. As she drove away, the possibilities danced in her mind. What would it mean if this connection deepened? What would happen if their vulnerabilities truly intertwined? The questions loomed large, but she was ready to face them, one dialogue at a time. The following week arrived with a blend of anticipation and trepidation. Michelle found herself pacing her living room, recalling the hesitance in the boy's eyes. David, she finally remembered. The raw honesty he'd offered her resonated, igniting a flicker of purpose within her that had long been dormant. What had once felt like a private battle now seemed intertwined with a chance to create real change. Her reflection bore the marks of sleepless nights, yet there was an unyielding spark in her gaze. The session would be different this time. It wasn't just about sharing her story anymore, it was something far grander. She was determined to leave a lasting impact, to become a figure that could encourage their growth as much as her own. Navigating through the day, thoughts of their last encounter echoed in her mind, elevating her nervous energy into a sense of urgency. Preparing for the discussion meant confronting her own feelings of inadequacy head-on. What if she transformed this opportunity into something bigger? Gathering her notes was almost automatic as she mentally structured an agenda. Instead of merely recounting her past, she decided to focus on creating an interactive dialogue. "I'll ask questions, I'll invite them to share," she thought, feeling the weight of her apprehensions lift slightly. Their experiences can anchor our discussions. However, as she pulled into the parking lot that day, the feeling of self-doubt crept back. The facility loomed ahead. Its walls seemed to amplify the doubts in her mind. What if she could not guide them effectively? What if vulnerability turned to ridicule, especially because some of the boys hadn't resonated with her story the last time? Steeling her resolve, she reminded herself of David's request. "Can we talk again?" It was a lifeline she clung to as she walked inside. The boys were waiting, eyes lit with curiosity and perhaps an unfamiliar eagerness. "I'm only human," she thought, grappling with the fear of rejection in the face of their youthful energy. But there was also an innate thrill. She could facilitate something transformative. "Hey everyone, I'm glad you came back," she greeted, her voice breaking the air like a clarion call for connection. The boys exchanged knowing nods, and she recognized that they were open for this second exchange, for more than just stories. They were waiting to build something together. Sliding her notes aside, she tossed the script in favor of genuine interaction. "How is everyone doing? What's been on your mind since we last met?" She watched as initial hesitations dissolved and hands shot up. Recommendations to openly share rippled through the group. They began to discuss pressures from school and the weight of their peers' expectations. With each shared anxiety, Michelle nodded, encouraging their expressions with affirmations, weaving a narrative of mutual understanding. It was risky, but the barrier between adult and adolescent began to dissipate. They were gaining trust, and in that moment she felt empowered. As the discussion deepened, a revelation struck. Her own challenges mirrored theirs. A boy named Marcus, typically silent, began to articulate feelings she understood intimately. His fear of failure resonated in her core. It was a haunting echo of her formative years. "I get it, Marcus. I sometimes feel that way too." The admission sparked a genuine connection, and suddenly the ambience shifted. It became clear that vulnerability was their shared practice. It was no longer just about trauma, but a blossoming camaraderie. Yet amid this budding connection, the voice of her inner critic re-emerged, siphoning joy from the breakthrough. But can this really help? Will they remember this? The question hung over her like an ominous cloud as the clock ticked down yet again. Offering new resolutions for next week, she parted ways, apprehensive yet hopeful. Had she truly made a difference? But as she left the building, she caught sight of David waiting by the door. He stepped forward, a resolute expression on his face. "I want to help others too. You showed me how," he said quietly, igniting a restless energy in Michelle.
And suddenly, she realized they weren't just healing. They were beginning to weave a legacy. What would it mean to empower him and the rest to share their stories with the broader world? The prospect loomed ahead, both daunting and exhilarating, creating an indelible thread that could lead to profound change. Days turned into weeks, and the sessions at the community center transformed from mere meetings into a sanctuary of shared growth and resilience. Michelle could hardly recognize herself anymore. Once hesitant and riddled with self-doubt, she had emerged as a guiding light. The boys, David, Marcus, and even the more reserved ones, had stepped up as enthusiastic participants. Each session built upon the last, with their growing camaraderie blossoming into a palpable energy that filled the room. One afternoon, as the sun cast a warm glow through the windows, Michelle found herself standing before the group, surveying their eager faces. She felt an unwavering sense of purpose coursing through her. Throughout their shared stories and experiences, she had watched these boys evolve, rising from expressions of uncertainty to the willingness to share their truths. They were becoming advocates for their own narratives, a direct reflection of the newfound clarity she had cultivated in her own journey. "Today, I want us to create something together," she announced, her heart racing with excitement and anticipation. "Let's develop a project that can impact others, not just us in this room, but the entire community." Eyes widened, whispers of anticipation filled the air. Michelle could feel the energy shift as the boys exchanged glances. Each of them held a glimmer of the change they had undergone, and she sensed that they were ready to give back. "What do you mean, like a charity or something?" Marcus ventured, his voice laced with curiosity. "Exactly," Michelle exclaimed, exhilaration bubbling within her. "Let's use our stories to inspire others. We can organize a community event, something that brings awareness to our struggles and showcases our growth. It could involve storytelling, workshops, even performances." Silence fell over the group, but it was charged with possibility. "But who will come?" David asked, a flicker of apprehension marring his resolve. "People will come because they care, especially when they see youth leading the charge." The conviction in Michelle's voice was buoyed by the collective strength she felt among them. "If we share our narratives, we can resonate with others who may be feeling alone. We can create a bridge of connection." The air thickened with ambition, and ideas began to spill forth. Marcus suggested a performance. David proposed an art installation illustrating their journeys. Each member of the group contributed thoughts that were more personal than the last, forging a tangible vision of their impact. As the weeks unfolded, long nights became glorious moments of collaboration. From planning meetings to practice sessions, each step etched into the fabric of their unity. Michelle demonstrated her nursing skill set, implementing strategies for stress management and teamwork. In turn, the boys revealed their talents, painting vivid canvases of their struggles intertwined with hope. They rehearsed stories that captivated, communicated, and elevated their voices, while encouraging vulnerability. Michelle orchestrated it all, nourishing their spirits, fanning the flames of inspiration. But challenges rose too. There were moments of doubt among the boys. Fears of public failure resurfaced, echoing Michelle's early insecurities. They were on the precipice of something monumental, yet shivering with trepidation. One evening, as she faced a particularly tense rehearsal, Michelle decided to take a step back, engaging them in an open dialogue. "This is about growth, your growth. It's okay to feel scared. It means you care," she said, inviting them into her world once more. Transparent vulnerability opened the door to a normalcy that felt like liberation. Together they reflected on their journeys, recalling the powerful growth, thus fostering solidity amongst their doubts. The weeks sped by, until finally the day of the event arrived. The community center, which had housed their fears and ambitions, transformed into a vibrant space brimming with warmth and anticipation. Banners swayed overhead, each painted bright in color, names scrawled with fervor, a testimony to the stories they all carried. As the audience began to fill the seats, Michelle felt the familiar thrum of anxiety rise. But then she caught the eye of David, who stood tall beside Marcus, both boys radiating confidence. In that moment, she recognized her own growth, the very foundation of leadership she had built with them. No longer was she merely a vessel offering guidance. She had become a collaborator, a mentor, a fellow traveler on the road to self-discovery. They took the stage together, and she felt a swell of pride as their voices cut through the crowd, sharing not only tales of pain, but triumph, resilience, and hope. Their stories were etched into every word and gesture, connecting them with the audience who leaned in, captivated. Laughter erupted during anecdotes. Teary eyes glistened in the midst of raw honesty. As the crowd erupted into applause, Michelle looked out over the audience's faces, each one reflecting the quiet power of connection. In that moment, a clarity settled within her. She had conquered her fears, transformed them into a force for good. The boys had too, emerging from shadows of doubt into the light of empowerment. That evening, as she stood backstage, every ounce of doubt and insecurity melted away, replaced by an unwavering confidence. It was no longer about her small triumphs. It was about a shared victory that rippled far beyond themselves, touching lives in unseen ways. They had ignited a journey bound for fulfillment that sparked a sense of community in the hearts of many. Their stories, once held in secret, had blossomed into a collective tapestry of strength, reminding them all that connectedness was a powerful healer, nourished through authenticity and courage. In the years to come, Michelle would reflect often on that pivotal event. Every session after that would condense into her ongoing growth as a nurse, a guide, a beacon for transformation. Because once she had chosen to embrace her past, now she understood it. It was a thread woven through lives, ultimately defining not just her path, but those whom she had once feared would define her not-enoughness. As she looked forward, Michelle knew this was merely a beginning, a launching point for champions of resilience and storytellers of hope in the tapestry of life. With newfound confidence, she envisioned further collaborations, broadened horizons, and continued healing, for herself and for others who were ready to rise with her. Now she truly understood. It was the connection that unlocked the door to collective growth, pushing past fears to find strength amid vulnerability. And that was worth every battle she had faced. The story of transformation would live on, and Michelle's journey had only just begun. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. You need to show your support. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.